we have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
Good evening, folks. You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper.
Is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Time, weather, and
Veteran of 3 foreign wars, entrepreneur, and warrior poet, Tony Arterburn takes on the issues facing our country, civilization, and planet. This is the Arterburn radio transmission.
The chair is certainly against the wall, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Arterburn radio transmission, and I am your host. I'm broadcasting from deep within the heart of Texas. I've got Beans the Brave on my lap. I don't know if she'll stay for the entire transmission, but a rare treat. Well, the last couple of weeks, nothing's happened, right? Did I miss anything? I tried going live twice last week and was... well, you don't want to chalk it up to conspiracy, but gosh, it sure looks like the way I couldn't use my internet for the exact time in Branson that I needed to go live, and no other time was it out. But anyway, we soldiered on, and I'm back in Texas, marveling at the headlines, wondering why it took so long for this political machine to show its true self. And it gives me no pleasure. It actually makes me sad in a way. I was talking to Travis Knight this morning on the David Knight Show, and I thinking about the Epstein case and the files that you'll never see, and the investigation that will never be, and the people that should be brought to justice that never will be, and what it actually means. There's a great article on Zero Hedge that we'll get to, but just from my personal life, I remember my first year in San Antonio working Wise Wolf at our first location, and behind the shop was some really affluent homes. It was a mixed neighborhood. I mean, I lived in an apartment. I could usually walk there, but my shop had a mixed demographic. And one day, right after Jeffrey Epstein, didn't kill himself when he was murdered in prison, this lady came in, and a very affluent looking, very, very beautiful older woman. She's probably in her late 60s and at the time. And she had this big bag of really exquisite jewelry, and I was going through it. I bought some from her. We talked for hours because I was assaying things and going through and giving her a bid. I'll never forget this story. And she's looking up at the television with Fox News Business streaming across it. And she says, I was a next door neighbor to Jeffrey Epstein when I lived in New York City. And she said, this is back in the 80s. And she's like, he was a very strange man, but very, very polite. And then she goes, do you want to know something really weird? She said, when I went into his home several times, but one time when I went in, I saw his closet, and it had, strangely enough, it had the same outfit over and over again, stacked next to each other. And that always stuck with me, because a lot of what you see, these are characters that are being played. And whenever this happens, whenever Epstein gets brought up again, because I covered so much of it, you remember the days of Trust the Plan and things from Roger Stone about what, Trump's revelations about kicking Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago because he was handsy or whatever it was. And you get all this, it's this political buffoonery back and forth. And really what Epstein is a character. He played a part. He was completely constructed out of thin air, much like Obama was, or Timothy McVeigh for that matter. He existed. He may still exist. He existed, but he was constructed. He was made. Interesting, tidbits of information. The Attorney General of the United States at the time of Epstein's second arrest, when, after he was house arrested in Florida and then, slapped on the wrist and nothing happened. But the leading up to his demise was Bill Barr. And of course, Bill Barr was Attorney General for George H.W. Bush back in the early 90s, CIA connected, and was represented Lon Haruchi, who was the sniper that shot Vicki Weaver in the head while she was holding her infant child at Ruby Ridge. Like, he's a real piece of work. This is an insider's insider. Well, he was the Attorney General when Epstein was arrested, and his father was the person who first gave Jeffrey Epstein a job to work with kids. And, it's funny because I remember David Knight bringing this up, and this is how weird the life can get. Epstein Barr is what you call a common cold, a rhinovirus, which is coronavirus. It's kind of weird, isn't it? And that's that's like the dead man switch or whatever it was with Epstein and the murder of this agent of Mossad or whatever he was. We just definitely know that Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted of trafficking children to no one. And if this doesn't wake you up from how dead end the political game is, I don't know what will. You have other concerns. They cover up bigger things. Honestly, there's probably so much going on that we're not focusing on. I know that it's in the macroeconomics we'll talk a little bit about today. That's certainly bigger picture, more important. But this is a glaring example of why the left-right paradigm is a dead end. And unfortunately, I think this has been a high watermark. Not only in the last 30 days, we've seen epical events in politics. It's the high watermark for not only the Israeli lobby with the interview of Ted Cruz by Tucker Carlson, which was genius. They don't have the influence that they used to, thank God. It's waning, which is good for our country. It's good for world peace. It's good for peace in general. It's just good for the right thing. But the second high watermark was MAGA, and MAGA is going to be fractured at this point. It's hobbled, and it won't make it out of this. It's too much. And you have whatever they're read into with Epstein. And, it's so connected. I mean, you guys know that the Zorro Trust, which Epstein controlled, and the Zorro Ranch out in New Mexico, where it's surrounded by state land where you can't even access it. Like, you can't buy land. Like, this little plot of land is his, owned by this trust. And they were doing genetic experiments. Where did he get his money? Like, this is how the elite of the elite traffic. He's just the front man. He's just the bag man. And the Zorro Trust won the lottery. Did you know that? It won like $29 million. So what are the mathematical chances? Or is that some sort of, he won the Oklahoma lottery, folks. The Zorro Trust did. I confirmed it before I went on air, and you can go look it up for yourself. This is an interconnected thing where if you go and dump this list out and you really dig into the files, what you're going to find is that the center of power conducts these blackmail operations and rings for its own self. They break the law. Not only that, I mean, they traffic in evil. And it's not just, the if you turn on traditional brain dead conservative talk radio, they'll give you this idea that, if we just get enough Republicans in, no, this transcends parties. That's why they're not going to release the list. They never were. I don't know why they ramped it up so big. It might have been to flush some things out, but they never intended to actually. They gave some weirdo, influencers like some documents to do something with. What was that about? And it was like strategically placed for them to carry out whatever that was to show that they were doing something. I think that the pressure was on, and we're going to get into this article here in a second. Then I want to talk about some macroeconomic issues. The BRICS nations are meeting. Great article on Natural News I'll get into, and I'll get to the chat today here as well. Let me pull this article up from Zero Hedge. But it's interesting, this is all out in the open now. I'd wondered how long it was going to take for nothing to happen. That's where we are, though, folks, unfortunately. Here, let me put this up. This is Zero Hedge. It's a good piece. It says, investigative journalist explains why Epstein case will never progress. This is authored by Steve Watson via modernity.news. Journalist Nick Bryant notes in his viral clip from the Sean Ryan podcast that the Jeffrey Epstein case is being covered up by the federal government and will never progress because it would destroy their entire operational system. Well, that sounds like me. Epstein had cameras in all of his homes. Epstein was definitely a blackmail artist, Bryant notes. The government wants to make sure that it does not come out. A huge part of our political system is predicated on blackmail, he adds. Well, not only that, but do you realize what you would need to pull off a 9/11? Well, you would need an Epstein. You would need this. Great example is the way that modern politics works is somebody like Denny Hassert, who was Speaker of the House, longest serving Republican Speaker of the House, was the one that he preceded Newt Gingrich. And he was the one that passed the Patriot Act, this post 9/11, shoved all that stuff through. Now, he was a pedophile and had been paying people off, paying the boys off that grew up, that, he was a wrestling coach, whatever he was. And they used the Patriot Act to arrest him because of the way that he was pulling money out of his account. But that's the type of people. They get recruited, folks. They use blackmail. It's absolutely predicated on blackmail. It's coercion. You wonder why I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't vote that way. I would stand up for yes, you would. You would never make it there. And some people do that are good. I've known people that have made, but it's not the majority. If you want to have the real seats of power, then they got to hold something over you. It says if that dark, malignant corner of the intelligence that's using blackmail against our politicians and or other people, if they were using children, that would make the American people erupt. He continues, for that dark corner of intelligence, this is Omaha Beach. They're not going to give an inch. Well, that dark corner of intelligence, if you know anything about Operation Midnight Climax or MK Ultra, or Operation Chaos, or COINTELPRO. If you know anything about those things, operations in the 1960s, they'll go to great lengths. I mean, just look at the Manson family, folks. Look at the CIA's involvement with Charles Manson and LSD and the Haight-Ashbury Clinic back in Summer of Love, 1967. If you look at all the victims and all the perpetrators and all the procurers involved in the Epstein network, no one's been indicted except for Ghislaine Maxwell. That really shows that our government, unfortunately, wants to stop it there. Why is our government aiding, abetting child trafficking unless they're protecting some very powerful people and a political process? Brian posits. That's why the only way this makes sense. As we highlighted yesterday, President Trump and Attorney General Pam Bondi responded very tersely to a reporter's question about the Epstein case Tuesday, with Trump clearly disgusted that it was still being brought up. The gaslighting that went on, it truly is astounding. Former CIA officer on Epstein whitewash, I just don't buy it. Trump vowed to provide transparency on the case, yet the DOJ is putting up a brick wall, prompting many of his supporters to call it out as unacceptable. Many have found themselves reluctantly having to agree with the likes of Trump hater Cenk Uygur and CNN propagandist Jake Tapper. Well, that's how bad it got. This is not a partisan issue. This is the foundation of how the deep state and how the state plays. It's no longer even hidden anymore. They just throw it in your face and gaslight you, and you're supposed to just digest this, accept it. Yeah. I think more will come of this, but not much. Again, this is from the highest levels. And there'll be pushes to disclose, like some of these posts that I'm seeing here, and that even some journalists. But I think most likely it'll end here. The great work from independent, alternative media and citizen journalists have gone on for years and done some great research on this. That's how I know about Zorro Ranch and, Epstein winning the lottery. That's how I know about that. That's why you know about it. But we'll never get disclosure from the government. That's how they run things. And probably this is very healthy. If you look at, sometimes you have to sober up, and our political discourse has really gone off the rails, and it's hijacked. It is almost cult-like. And the money that I've missed out on, unfortunately, because of this, and I don't just lament the money, I do fine, but the rings you have to kiss and the things you have to bow down to because of MAGA have made it unacceptable to even associate with it because of things like this. I cannot back this. It's one of the reasons I threw up my hands, and I would not understand, what was that we're doing this again, and we did it again, and we got to we like Sisyphus, the Greek legend. We rolled the rock up the hill and just have it roll back on us for eternity. So we continue to do that. We rolled the rock up the hill, and as conservatives and people and traditionalists and people that love the Constitution, I still believe in the country. The issue is what does this say about our politics? And it shows it to be hollow. And really, it's an IQ test at this point, isn't it, folks? All right. Well, I'm going to jump over into we'll go into some financial stuff. If I have time, I want to read some headlines off. There's still stuff going on in foreign policy wise. I definitely want to get into some of the headlines on anti-war. And I've got Beans the Brave with me today. She's decided to stay on my lap for this show. So definitely glad she's here. I mean, she's wanting to get down. It's like, okay, girl. All right, let's see. You'll click around for a little bit. Let's jump over into this article up on Natural News, and then I'll take us to the chat. It's definitely good to be back, guys. All right, let's get on Natural News. And this is what's really going on, okay? BRICS nations forge financial independence as Russia accelerates global de-dollarization movement. This is the stuff to pay attention to. The global financial order is undergoing a seismic shift, and the BRICS alliance, comprising Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now expanded to include Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the UAE, is leading the charge. With mounting distrust in the U.S. dollar's dominance and growing resentment towards Western financial weaponization, BRICS nations are aggressively pursuing alternatives that sideline the dollar and shield member economies from Washington's coercive sanctions. Well, that's right. We have 40 plus sanctions on 36 different countries, folks. The dollar has been weaponized. As a matter of fact, today, a 50% tariff went into effect on copper. Now, that's not very smart because we need copper for just about everything that has machine parts and electric lines and tube, everything you need. Copper is the glue of civilization, and we just slapped a 50% tariff. By the way, I'm a tariff guy. I just don't understand whatever this is. And the world's retaliating, and the BRICS nations, I've got some articles, they're moving away. Again, this is what highlights in this article, moving away from dollar dominance, de-dollarizing, and trading amongst themselves. As Russian Finance Minister Antov Silinov declared to RT, national currencies offer BRICS nations a lifeline, a system unshackled from Western manipulation and capable of resisting political pressure. The timing is no coincidence. With U.S. sanctions freezing Russia's foreign reserves and restricting SWIFT access, Moscow has accelerated efforts to dismantle the dollar's supremacy, reinforcing alliances that threaten the bedrock of Western financial control. Yeah, just reading today, just going over the metrics for BRICS. It's now with these other nations that have been added to the docket, 50% of the world's population now, it makes up the BRICS nations. 50%, more than 50%, and 40% of the world's gross domestic product, folks. A very powerful alliance that is being made right now. And its key points: BRICS is rapidly advancing de-dollarization, with Russia pushing for trade settlements in national currencies rather than the U.S. dollar. Another aspect of that is gold and Bitcoin. As you see more and more, gold becomes the world's reserve currency, and it's quiet. But that's what's happening. They're using and will use, I think, electronic means. They're not going to create a unified currency to compete against the dollar. They're using cross-border payment systems and gold, and could be using things like Bitcoin and stablecoins. The new development bank, NDP, BRICS financial institution, is crafting sanctions-proof mechanisms to bypass Western financial infrastructure. And this is not just about bypassing the sanctions, folks. And it's not just that we won't get our hands on or won't be able to affect or apply pressure or project power. It's going to hurt us financially, hurt the United States. The ability for the political class, the parasite class, to print unlimited amounts of U.S. dollars because we can go willy-nilly around the world and do whatever we want because we're the American empire. Those days are coming to an end. Nearly 90% of Russia-China trade, $227 billion in 2023, is now settled in rubles and yuan, a stark rejection of dollar dependency. 90% of Russia-China trade is now settled in rubles and yuan. China is accelerating its divestment from U.S. treasuries, dumping $53.3 billion in Q1 2024, while bolstering gold reserves as a hedge against dollar instability. Over 50 countries have expressed interest in joining BRICS, signaling a growing revolt against Western financial hegemony. Since the West froze $300 billion of Russia's foreign reserves in 2022, Moscow has pivoted decisively towards self-reliance. Selenianoff emphasized on RT that transactions proceed through direct bank links, bypassing SWIFT and dollar clearinghouses, ensure reliability and independence from Western lending institutions. Well, this goes back to what I covered in 2022 when the Russian finance minister said that dollars were candy wrappers. And if you look into the Russian dialect, it's like toilet paper. Like they don't use them. They don't want them. And they started using their rich energy and crude oil reserves and started trading in crude oil and gold, and the ruble bounced back even after the sanctions. BRICS pay and the death of dollar diplomacy. Beyond gold and local currencies, BRICS is constructing a parallel financial architecture. Discussions around a blockchain-based BRICS pay system enabling CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, for cross-border trade could cripple Washington's ability to enforce sanctions via dollar leverage. Of course they will do this. And I'm not, by the way, I'm not cheering this on, but this is brought on by the ruling class. And as Gore Vidal said, it's not a conspiracy if they all think alike. They go to the same schools. They all go to the same cocktail parties. They're the same people. And they've put us in this collision course with the rest of the world because of our bullying. This is why the West can't ignore the rebellion. The dollar supremacy rests on the petrodynamics and military might, but BRICS is untethering both. Saudi Arabia, long the linchpin of the petrodollar recycling, now accepts yuan for oil. That's another thing. We lost the petrodollar, remember? Meanwhile, NATO's Ukraine gambit backfired. Russia's ruble, once deemed worthless by the West, has stabilized through BRICS trade channels. Washington's response, bullying Chinese banks to cut Russian ties, only fuels the revolt. And remember, it wasn't that long ago, maybe a year or so, that Xi Jinping and Putin met, had this little summit, and Xi Jinping, before he left, turned to and made sure that everybody could hear, but he turned and he faced Vladimir Putin and said, we are here to witness the greatest change in the last 100 years. And what he's talking about is the demise of the current financial, political, economic world order structure. The question isn't whether de-dollarization will happen, but how fast. With 30 plus nations eyeing BRICS membership, the alliance expansion mirrors the fall of the gold standard. The West's financial dominance, like its military-industrial complex, faces an existential threat, one built not in Brussels or D.C., but in the vaults of Moscow and Beijing. That's exactly right. We're being out, this is being a maneuver to get away from the West's financial systems, to leave us behind, and to de-dollarize. That is the trend. China at one time was the largest buyer of U.S. held treasuries. Now they're the greatest seller. They're dumping it. The world is dumping the dollar. And the financial networks are not going to talk about this with you. That's why I do this show. It's going to be too late. When you start hearing the average person start talking about getting into gold, like, it's going to be too late, especially at the supply levels that we're in. And, I talk about this a lot, but just putting the numbers up, look at the metrics. The market cap for gold is 20 trillion. The total financial, if you financialize the world economies and all the assets outside of gold, could be 900. It's something like that. It's in the high 800s at least, 800 trillion. And gold makes up 20. So it's not even capitalized right. And the same thing with Bitcoin and silver. Bitcoin's at about 2 trillion and silver's at about 1.5, something like that. So a tiny fraction of what the world economic value supposedly is. All right, I've ignored the chat too long. See, Billy Ray's in the chat. Good to see you, Billy Ray. Kat Goyda's in the chat. Thanks for being here. So we're over on YouTube. You can find my show. It streams over on YouTube. One comment says the propaganda has become as lazy as cinema. It's very like the script doesn't even work anymore. You're not even trying. The predecessors of, the people that put together the JFK assassination were very careful. It was a miraculous, crime. I mean, it is. You have to tip your hat for the evil genius of those. And 9/11 was on par with that. It was a lot more sloppy. Oklahoma City was sloppy too, but nothing as sloppy like they've had with the last 5-6 years. Has been absolutely insane. They're just they're going all out. Definitely gaslighting you and expecting you to forget. Yeah, there's so much going on here. I'm just reading the chat here, guys. Bear with me a second. I want to check the Rumble stream too. We're also on the America Unplugged channel over on Rumble. Yes, in Texas, you can use gold as legal tender. That's just been passed. I think they're going to take a couple of years to really get that through. And it will take a while for adoption to happen. But we got some cool news here in Texas. I just put a lease on a bank, an old branch bank in downtown Denison. And it's still got the safe. It's got the drive-through window. It's got the tube and everything. So I just signed the lease yesterday. So Wise Wolf is going to have, and we're going to do it a little different this time. I'll make an announcement right before we go live on it. But Wise Wolf's going to be the only gold, silver, Bitcoin physical exchange in Texas that I know of. Especially, I will be the only one with a drive-through. Okay. So we're going to work on that, and that's something that's going to be great for Denison, something that Dallas doesn't have. So I just did that yesterday, and Beans and I are going to go work on that as soon as we're done with the transmission. So I'll have more for that, more on that front very soon. But you guys make that possible. If you're a member of Wolfpack and you support Wise Wolf, either gold, silver, or Bitcoin, we appreciate you. We expand because of you. All right. Let's go. I got some more articles on something from the World Gold Council I found interesting. Twisted Communique says, Tony is the president of Texas, accept the facts. Harp says, Tony's become a banker. No, I'm not a bankster, Harp. I have an old branch bank. It's a tiny little, a branch bank, a tiny one, like it's 1,400 square feet, but it still has the drive-through. I thought it was cool. So you'll be able to do drive-through gold and silver or Bitcoin. I don't know anybody that does that. I'm doing innovations, my friend. As maybe the copper tariff is to hurt other nations in building their AI databases. AI is the new space race. It's possible, but that hurts us because it'll make the price, because of our domestic copper mining, it's not enough. It's not fast enough. And I'm sure that this will be something that'll be dropped in some way, but it makes the futures markets jump. Let's put this up on the screen. This was off Kitco. And I'll talk a little bit about what we got going on at Wise Wolf here soon. Kitco.com. Trillions in new U.S. debt will push gold prices higher even without a fiscal crisis. This is from the World Gold Council. Gold prices will benefit from soaring U.S. deficits and mounting fiscal instability, even if no near-term crisis occurs, according to analysts at the World Gold Council. Well, that's true. And it's just metrics that, even with the dollar not backed by gold, they still follows it's the amount of M2, the money supply, buttressed with the amount of debt, and you get a formula that will show you the rising price of gold. With the passing of the one big, beautiful bill, the U.S. is staring down an additional $3.4 trillion in debt over the next decade and a U.S. $5 trillion lift to the debt ceiling, unless the Trump administration can deliver on its lofty growth forecasts, they wrote on Tuesday. Add that to Elon Musk's launch of the America Party and a political charged backdrop, and the risks, both fiscal and political, are stacking up. The analyst said that these uncertainties have already triggered a global reallocation of capital as the weakening U.S. dollar has driven gold prices and treasury yields higher. Weakening U.S. dollar has driven gold prices and treasury yields higher. Pressures mount. Bond market volatility is likely to persist, ultimately supporting demand for gold as a safe haven asset. Of course it is. I was looking just at the tweet feed of Gold Telegraph, and that's a great account. I have no association with it, but it's a great account for news on precious metals and rare earth minerals and even crypto. But it just shows, the central banks added 20 tons of gold in May. And they're just continuing to accumulate in the face of what's happening on a macro level around the world. And it's the intersection of history where you have fiat and infinite colliding with finite. And that's why yesterday, I think this is part of it, but Bitcoin had its highest day ever, had another all-time high at 112,000. And that is, again, even if there was no Bitcoin, gold would be at 5,000 plus or more right now. Silver would certainly be higher. And there's only so much of that transfer going on right now. But that trend is picking up. That's why you see Bitcoin expanding, and that's why you see gold and silver continuing to push higher. We'll talk more about silver in the coming weeks too. I'm doing some analysis on that, just looking at the timelines. I can certainly see a lot of things changing on the ground level with the physical ordering in shops. The World Gold Council outlined a detailed list of the potential impacts of this new fiscal landscape on the gold market. First, there was Liberation Day, when Donald Trump's initial tariff announcement set off alarms, an unprecedented sell-off in U.S. Treasuries, they noted. The market has barely recovered from that turmoil and is now pondering the potential impact of Trump's big, beautiful bill, which we're going to read about here in a second. There's a great article up on Activist Post. The analyst said that investors are watching to see what impacts the spending bill will have on asset allocation strategies. With uncertainties everywhere, it's likely that gold will continue to be an attractive safe haven for investors navigating a volatile world in which fiscal concerns are adding to investor risk. Well, that's the World Gold Council, and I'm looking to statements that have been floated too by the IMF lately, the Bank of International Settlements, the EU, and it's funny, they all agree that the price of gold's going to go higher if you really read into it, but some are alarmed by that. Like the European Union is very alarmed. They said that gold threatens the economic order of things because their currencies are dying in comparison, because their entities are dumping currencies, institutions are dumping currencies, not just the dollar, it's fiat is being liquidated, folks. And that's what's happening. That's why there's a trend going into hard assets, sound money. That's just the place in history that we are. And it's only just begun. You didn't miss the boat, by the way. Because you look at, I had this article up, but this is right off the bat. Let me put this up too. This is kind of in line with what we were talking about in that article. It brought up Elon Musk. And you're going to see more of this kind of stuff. Elon Musk calls the US dollar hopeless and says his America Party will embrace Bitcoin. Elon Musk slammed the dollar on social media, calling it another fiat money hopeless. His America Party will embrace crypto, he says. That could set up another area of contention with Donald Trump, who was his political ally for many months. Yeah, that didn't last long, did it? But he's already done this. And a lot of the crypto people and Bitcoin people that were in the Trump camp, there's going to be, I think, some flow over to whatever this is. But that's what happens at the end cycle of something, and especially in a fourth turning. You're going to see, I think, multiple political factions and parties, and also the old order. And I will continue to say this. I think that we've seen the high watermark for whatever MAGA was. And we'll get, I see Billy listening off. He's in the green room here on the StreamYard. I'd love to get his take on that sometime. Maybe we'll talk about it on America Unplugged. I definitely think that we're watching something. The midterms are coming. Trump is scrambling to replace Jerome Powell at the Federal Reserve so they can, remember what we talked about? Why is Trump mad at Powell? It's because Powell won't lower interest rates. Because Powell sees and rightly so, if you did that, it will trigger further inflation, which will continue the demise and the weakening of the U.S. dollar. On a long enough timeline, that thing's going away, right? The dollar hegemony, whatever you want to call it, that leverage that the globalists have in the American empire. And those who are the stewards of that fiat currency don't necessarily want it to die that fast, and that would accelerate it, but it'd be good short-term politically. So you're going to be fighting that. You'll see that fight will start coming up in December and going into next year, and they'll rapidly start looking for somebody to replace Powell. And it's interesting that you can't replace him now, right? It's interesting that the chief executive of the United States doesn't have the authority to replace the head of the Federal Reserve, which is supposed to be the Federal Reserve, isn't it? But it's not federal. It's a private banking consortium. But you never really get to see those headlines or any breakdown of that logic with the mainstream. All right. Last article of the day. I found this over on Activist Post. Great piece. But we talk about the big, beautiful bill. And that's another thing that it's almost like there's so much. We'll get into that too. It's so massive, and the grift in this thing and the bloatedness of it, and you got to wonder, like, these kind of headlines with what is the Epstein? What is that? The non-disclosure disclosure, telling you what it is without telling you what it is. What does that mean for these headlines? Is that what this was put into put out there for, perhaps, to cover up some of this stuff. This is Activist Post. This is the big, beautiful bill in America's real welfare queens. And again, my friend Charlie Robinson, you got to visit Activist Post. It's a great news aggregator. Some great articles over here. It's by Matt Smith, Doug Casey. This is stupid me. I started reading the bill recently passed by Congress. I just started reading the recently passed bill endorsed by Trump at 829 pages. 829. It promises a different government than we had with Biden. Many of his pet policies are eliminated, but the new government it promises is bigger, more racked with debt, and even more oriented to what you'd expect in a war economy. It says, but some context first. The big, beautiful bill starts off promisingly enough. Early provisions cut $30 billion from the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, over 10 years. It implements stricter work requirements for adults aged 50 to 54 without dependents. For instance, some adults who claim disability aren't classified as totally and permanently disabled now, and they have to return to work or to continue to receive benefits. So far, so good. The bill also eliminates Medicaid eligibility for undocumented immigrants and tightens verification requirements, which the Congress Budget Office, the CBO, estimates will reduce Medicaid rolls by over 3 million people, mostly recent immigrants or non-citizens. In parallel, states are incentivized to be more aggressively purge enrollment for technical non-compliance like missed paperwork. Additionally, the bill imposes limits on eligibility and funding for the Earned Income Tax Credit, removing and reducing benefits for many part-time workers. The justification, America is broke, we're told. We can't afford to fund able-bodied people living on government handouts. Who can argue with that? And he says, now it's the big, beautiful contradiction. And then I got to page 28. Here the bill dramatically boosts farm subsidies, including many that are completely untethered from actual production. It's a contradiction so bad, it almost escapes notice. The government cracked down on what conservatives once called welfare queens, then handed billions to the real welfare aristocracy in America, politically protected farmers, especially huge agribusiness. For all the cultural emphasis on rugged independence in rural America, farming is, after all, one of the most heavily subsidized sectors in the U.S. economy. The vast majority of these subsidies go to producers of just a handful of crops: corn, soybeans, wheat, cotton, rice, peanuts, sorghum, and barley. These are the so-called program crops that are eligible for the most Title I commodity subsidies. Notably excluded are most fruits, vegetables, and nuts, referred to as specialty crops. These crops receive minimal federal support and are often subject to planting restrictions if a farmer wishes to receive Title I subsidies. No wonder America is the land of monocrops. So the policy choices made decades ago and reinforced every farm bill cycle continue to dictate what gets grown in America and what doesn't. The result is a federal food policy that supports calorie-dense, commodity-based agriculture over nutrient-rich, diversified farming. It says, as someone who grew up in farm country, government farm policies that amount to welfare have always bothered me. Farmers are somehow a group you cannot criticize. Meanwhile, our farm policies crush small farmers and deliver lavish welfare benefits to the big boys. Well, that's what we do. We have we have socialism for the rich and free enterprise for the poor. Price loss coverage, welfare by another name. The way these programs are calculated isn't just complicated, it's complicated on purpose. The more arcane the math, the easier it is for Congress to disguise who's getting paid and how much. The big, beautiful bill raises the statutory floor from $3.70 to $4.10 a bushel then sweetens the math so payouts climb even higher. This really started under FDR, and they'd pay you not to grow crops. Like, they would pay not to grow, trying to do price controls by other means. Here's how it works. The U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA, takes the last 5 years of corn prices, drops the highest and lowest, and then sets the reference price at 88% on that average. That figure becomes the effective reference price unless it exceeds 113% of the statutory floor. Well, don't you love centralized control? Says, yes, you read it right. PLC payments are based on historical planting data, not current production. These base acres were originally calculated using planting history from 1991 to 1995, and in some cases were updated in later farm bills, like 2002 or 2014, to reflect more recent trends, but they still are mostly based on data that's decades old. Beyond the welfare gravy train. In addition to direct support tied to real and hypothetical production and price guarantees, some of the largest subsidy recipients, particularly in specialty crop regions like California, benefit from conservation and water infrastructure programs. For example, the Resnick's billionaires, owners of the Wonderful Company, have long benefited from federally supported water projects in California's Central Valley. Though not always listed under farm subsidies, these water programs enable otherwise unsustainable farming in arid regions by delivering subsidized acres of water. What's funny about this article, too, is he continues to list all the subsidies, and he gets down and he just tells you, hold on, I'll get there in a second. This is, again, he said, I'm on page 28, and we'll get to the end here in a second. In fiscal year 2023, federal crops insurance subsidies cost $12.5 billion. And it is, you know, the historical relevance of the Farm Bill. That was one of the ways that they showed that Ronald Reagan was still alive when he was shot by John Hinckley in 1981. They had him sign the Farm Bill, which he didn't actually sign. It was like he had Nancy help him. I mean, it was like he was under anesthesia and everything. Like, just sign the Farm Bill. It'll show that you're still cognizant. Says increases in the new. I grew up hearing farmers complain about the weather. With subsidies like this, who cares? With guaranteed income from the government, farmers have little to fear from bad weather and no market incentive to diversify or innovate. The new bill significantly boosts support, raises reference prices for key crops like corn and soybeans, increases the effective reference price multiplier from 85% to 88%, expands cost sharing of crop insurance premiums, adds new payments for poultry insurance, increases ARC and PLC caps slightly. He's really, this is, again, he just dug into the part of the bill that's for the bloating up the farm subsidies. These programs are deeply entrenched, he says. Americans like farmers. I do too. Pointing out this long-standing grift is akin to criticizing firemen, but let's face it, this system is broken and this bill makes it even worse. While the average farmer participates in the grift when he can, the big beneficiaries are large landowners and agribusiness, not small family farms. According to USDA data, the top 10% of subsidy recipients collect more than 70% of the payments. He says, so what's next in the BBB? So now I'm on page 40 of this Big, beautiful bill. Only 789 pages to go. Scanning ahead, it looks like it gets way worse from here. The policies most agree with are usually front-loaded in the text of the bill. Is it even worth continuing on? It's a lot of brain damage to read through these bills. So if you want me to continue to break down what I see, let me know. And that's Matt Smith over at Crisis Investing. He made it only 789 pages to go. Well, that's the big, beautiful bill, ladies and gents. All right. Well, I want to get into some pricing. We'll call out spot prices before we go. And I wanted to mention, I didn't get to talk last week. I tried twice, by the way. But I wanted to tell you, I've been giving it some thought, and I want to bring back one of my sponsors that I've neglected to plug. I've been with them for 23 years, but in light of everything that's happening in the culture, and it's just a good program for everybody to check out, and that's with Legal Shield. That's peoplesprotectionplan.com. Like, I've been with them for 23 years. I highly recommend it if you are in need of a will, for your assets, so you need to get the state involved. If something happened to you, you get unlimited access to attorneys for no cost. It's price of a cup of coffee a day. They can give you audit protection if you're ever audited for your federal income tax, and you get moving violations are taken care of with your vehicles. All of that, they'll review documents. Everything is done for less than a cup of coffee a day. You go to peoplesprotectionplan.com and get yourself a plan. I've had one since I was 22. I've never been without it. Haven't been 1 month without it for all those years, and I've used it extensively. I highly recommend it. Anybody listening to me, you should definitely check it out. And I will bring that up again. I've neglected to do that, and I'm going to be talking to some of my other hosts about it as well. All right, let's do spot prices really quick. Pull that up today. Gold is at 3,317 Luciferian Bankster notes per troy ounce. 3,317 federal fiat reserve notes per troy ounce of the yellow metal. Silver is up since the time of this broadcast, $36.79 a troy ounce for the white metal. Totally undervalued. I think both these metals are, but especially silver, that is extremely cheap given the global economic strength of currency versus metal and what silver actually represents. So that is gold and silver. Let's check out the price of Bitcoin. Let's see. I was going over some articles earlier today. Bitcoin, 111,221 Luciferian Bankster notes, LBNs, make up one Bitcoin. And remember, there are 22 million millionaires in the U.S., and there's only 16 million available Bitcoin. So not even every millionaire could own one Bitcoin in the U.S. Bitcoin is very scarce. That's why its price is doing what it's doing right now. And again, in comparison to what's happening with the rest of the world in the fiat system. So do your homework and check out some of these things, some of these articles that I've thrown out to you, and do your own thinking. Because we're definitely in a time when you got to think for yourself, and the political system should show you that. Don't let other people do your thinking for you. You'll pay a dear price. So I appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks for being here. I will be up on America Unplugged Saturdays. Join me and Billy Ray Valentine and the legendary Don Jeffries every Saturday, 11 a.m. Central Time, 12 Eastern, for America Unplugged. Always a great conversation. And more announcements from Wise Wolf coming soon. If you go to wolfpack.gold, if you've been a member of Wolfpack and you want to come back, we have a a promo code backpack, and it gets you free silver. So don't miss out. Okay. Backpack is the code. And we've got all sorts of new programs coming out. I'm working with Yeka to get some gold backs on there permanently. But we are working around the clock to get product too. So it's interesting times. Join us if you can. All right. We'll be back next week. From Beans the Brave and myself, you guys take care of each other. End of transmission.